Both polar caps on Mars have kilometers deep, 30 kilometers deep of ice. Both polar caps also have a seasonal dry ice cap, the south. And this is where the eccentricity of Mars's orbit, the fact that it has the southern summer is warmer than the northern summer is. Sorry, it's a bit backwards. The northern summer is warmer than the southern summer. So in the north, since it's warmer, it has a seasonal dry ice layer of about a meter, and that completely sublimates from the polar cap in the summer, and then gets deposited in the winter. And in the south, it's 8 meters of permanent dry ice, which also sublimates in the southern summer, but always leaving behind a permanent dry ice cap on top of the water ice. And it turns out that it's like 30%, about a third of the atmosphere. It's not like this small dusting of ice. I mean, we're talking about a third of the entire Martian atmosphere is involved in freezing out on the poles and sublimating seasonally. And that drives huge winds, and it drives all of the Martian weather. And so here are water ice clouds seen by the Opportunity rover. And we, in recent impact craters, have these very bright ejecta, and this is basically excavated water from beneath the surface. And also these patches of the Phoenix rover uncovered buried ice patches as well. And we also know from energetic particle detector that can actually measure the presence of hydrogen in the subsurface. And that's mapped out hydrogen all over the planet. And so we know that there are mid-latitude regions that have large amounts of hydrogen, and the most likely form of the hydrogen is water. And so there's abundant evidence that both from these ice patches, these craters that eject ice out into the surface, and these maps of hydrogen showing all the presence of subsurface water. But unfortunately, the water is in the form of ice, and water ice isn't great for life. You've all heard that water is one of the essential ingredients for life, and the reason is that water is a great solvent. It provides a medium for which the chemical reactions necessary to life take place. It's a good solvent for lots of things, including DNA. And so if you freeze the water, then suddenly the rate at which you can have reactions in a solid just drops precipitously. And so you really need it to be liquid water in order to be useful to my orbiting spectrometer, infrared and visible light spectrometer, to look at minerals on the surface, because they have very specific vibration modes that have very specific frequencies in the infrared. And so you can look at sunlight reflected off of these minerals, and they'll absorb the specific frequencies that will essentially give you a fingerprint of the mineral that's involved. And so these are all the green areas are clays that the Omega instrument, this is the spectrometer on Mars Express, infrared and visible spectrometer. And also the blues are the hydrated minerals. And so this gives you an indication of the presence of liquid water in order to form these minerals was widespread over the surface. And then finally, from the landers again, you can see stratigraphic evidence. You can see these various banded layers here that look like they're formed by sedimentation. These are called blueberries, and what they are is little spheroids of hematite. And the way to get these little spheroids of hematite, they're about the size of a BB. And the way to form these is by it's basically mineral-laden water, and the spheroids precipitate out of that mineral-laden water inside of the rock, and then subsequent erosion exposes the spheroids to the surface. So these essentially have to be formed effectively in standing water. You get hydrated silicates. This is the rover tracks exposing hydrated silicates. And then this is a really interesting one here. These are called festooned cross-lamination, and that's a fancy word. It just means sort of concave ripples. You see these ripples? And the way these are formed on Earth as well, the way these are formed is they're effectively preserved sand dunes. So that the action of water forming these little ripples in the rock, and then they get preserved in the sedimentary rock. And you get essentially a piece of the seafloor. So that really does imply standing water over long periods of time.